In transcription, let me just make sure it starts first. Looks like it's going. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. My name is Asif Rehmani, and I had invited Kylie and Heidi also as the Dynamics experts to join in here. I look at both of you, of course. Now I met you now. It's been a few months now, I think, that I've known you, and I feel like already we're, at least from my perspective, good friends. And I enjoy talking with you every time. So since this was going to be a Dynamics specific topic, I wanted you both to be here. We're going to be digging into just the whole Dynamics CRM, user adoption, training, and anything else that we want to talk about. The hope for this type of a roundtable always is to have enough people talking back and forth, so it's not just the experts talking. It's truly a roundtable. In the we have conducted, as a company, VisualSP, we have conducted this roundtable for executives. We have done it for Microsoft 365 people, SharePoint people, and all. Pam has actually helped a lot in those roundtable as well. So Pam, thank you very much for that. Once again, the idea has always been to collaborate instead of present in these roundtable, make it a feel for like you're at a conference sitting at the table together. So we'll see how collaborative it gets. Having said that, those of you who do not know Kylie and Heidi, what I wanted to do also is before we start, I just want to show your LinkedIn pages. Is that okay? Just so everybody knows who you are, and they'll see this in the recording also. Let me share this over here. Here we go. So here's Heidi, Microsoft MVP, user adoption expert, focus on Dynamics 365, Power Platform, and she runs the company along with their husband, right? Nick, who I got to meet as well, really awesome guy. And the company is called Reenhanced. Anything specific you want to say about you and your company, Heidi?
No, I think you covered it in a nutshell.
Okay.
Well, one of the things I will say that she made it a compassionate plea that she's there to do the right thing for the customer, not milk them out of cash. She emphasized that at the San Antonio conference, and I love that.
Wonderful. Then we also have Kylie. Kylie is also a Microsoft Dynamics 365 MVP, Business Applications MVP. Kylie is from Virginia. And Kylie, you also run a user group as well. Oh, here you go. It says that user group. Actually, Heidi, you do as well, don't you?
I do, yeah.
You do.
I should have put that on the heading.
Yeah, I should have.
Now I feel like a failure. Sorry, Philly user group.
Oh my God. Yes, Heidi runs the Philly user group, and Kylie is in Virginia. She runs a user group over there. I believe both of your user groups are also online as well. So if anybody wanted to join, they can do that, correct?
Correct.
Awesome.
Yep. We're still meeting virtually every month, so anybody can join from anywhere.
And I'm signed up.
Nice. And Kylie works at Hitachi Solutions America. How big is Hitachi Solutions Americas, by the way?
There's a lot of us. I think there's like 300 people in North America. So not small. I think they have like 100 people for CE. I'm not sure. That might be too big. I don't know.
Okay. No worries. I guess the easiest thing to do actually could just go over here and see as well.
There's
you can always see from here people 785. There you go.
Wow.
All right. And lastly, this is me, Asif. For those of you who don't know me, I am the CEO of VisualSP here and also a Microsoft MVP, but my MVP has been always from the Microsoft 365 side, although I've been becoming very active in the Dynamics community and loving it. Thanks for the welcome, Kylie, Heidi, and everybody else who has welcomed me in the community. Very nice to be here. So that's that. Once again, the focus of this session is something that is near and dear to always been to my heart. Those of you who know me and have followed me for many years, that all these technologies that we build, and I started with SharePoint back in the day in 2001. Then moved on to SharePoint from on-premises to online, then Microsoft 365, and now Dynamics. Every single thing that I've seen the exact same trend in Microsoft, and then I've seen the exact same trend outside where unless it becomes a SaaS product, the vendor feels that the user adoption is automatic. There's no training required. Everything is intuitive. Everything is easy. And those of us here already know, because I've talked to you all, that that's not the case. There are struggles out there. And then there's different ways of course, attacking that, making the product easier, making the training better, making the support easier, making some of these also changes in the interface that you can control to make it easier. So we want to talk about those things over here and have this capture of knowledge in this pool of people, and then we'll put it out there for others to see as well. So having said that, pretty broad topic. Anybody want to jump in and talk about any of these things to start with? Heidi is smiling. She wants to do it. Yeah.
Nobody else is. All right. I love user adoption. I've been talking about user adoption for years. And it's always like a catch-22 with getting an organization on board for enhancing user adoption, right? And what I mean is like involving your users throughout the entire life of your project, whether it's a go live or it's a new enhancement or a new feature that you're rolling out. It's very, very important to have your end users involved in that. But I know if you're listening to this and you work for management, you're thinking, why am I going to take my users out of their day-to-day job right now? It's not ready for them to see. So it's this constant balancing act of when should I bring my users in? When is it too early? When is it more beneficial? And how do you convince management that we need all of those users, the entire process? That's what I think is the biggest struggle, getting everybody on board to have your users on board. Does that make sense?
It does. I see many times, and I put this in my slide deck also, that user adoption is looked upon sometimes as a project, that we will deal with implementation, we'll deal with systems, and then we'll deal with user adoption. And I think that's the wrong way of doing it. It's more of a user adoption as a service that you have to provide all the way through, from the envisioning throughout the life cycle of when you're going to have this product or products. But it doesn't always go that way, unfortunately.
It usually doesn't go that way. But that's when they have to bring in people like us to fix it,
There you
right?
go.
That's when you have to call somebody and say, nobody's using my system, I need help. Well, you could have alleviated all of that pain and had them onboarded from the very beginning if you just gave it the attention it deserves. User adoption as a service. It's very well put.
There you go.
Yeah, and I think something that I know the three of us for sure have talked about is ongoing training too, because so often, and ongoing, not just training, but development of new training, right? Because so often we're only including it with the go live, and that's when we're creating all that content. And even if we make that content accessible in multiple places, we're not getting people new training. And I think so many of the projects that we work on, we're iteratively delivering, right? And we're iteratively bringing out new functionality for users. But so often the training of that just kind of falls by the wayside, right? Or it's like, okay, well, we'll get to that when we get to that.
Yeah.
And we really need to find a way to even integrate our training into our sprint work, right? Is developing whatever materials or help that we can for people and really showcasing those new functionality that we deliver to them, right?
Which brings another challenge. When do you create your training materials? Especially when you're in this agile approach where things are constantly changing and you're constantly refreshing the way the things are being done based on your user feedback.
And
I don't have a good answer for that, but that is a thing to think about.
Yeah, and who's going to do it, right? Because that's the other thing, because we have, I think in a lot of large organizations, right? They have their tech people and they have their training people, and they don't like each other, and they're not communicating. And even if they pass things over to the training department, when are they going to get around to making this training? And I think that some of that accountability needs to be on the CRM team or the D365 or Power Platform team, whoever you are, to make sure that that's getting created and taking some ownership for putting that, doing that and putting it somewhere.
Yeah. And your tech people probably have a different dialect than your end users too.
Yes.
Yes.
Always. Yeah.
And that's where I try to get the end users involved, because we have tooltips. Tooltips have been available forever. And just to ask these departments, you're the user of this. What do you call this? What would you like people to know? If you just hover over this, for the tech guy, copy, paste. I don't care what the wording is. It's that simple. But even the users of it don't want to share that information. And a lot of this is that silo mentality that as long as I'm the only one that knows how to do this, I'm valuable. As soon as I share that with somebody, then I'm no longer unique. Well, that means you're unnecessary, because if I have to go through and find out how to do this on my own and go around you and you put up the roadblocks for this, you're not a team player. You're the roadblock that I want to get rid of.
I think that's
There's also
Mm-hmm.
some sense of ownership. Like you ask people or owners, you ask people for feedback, like what would you like to see in there? And they're like, well, I mean, this is what works for me, is what they're thinking in their head, but they don't necessarily, they're like, well, am I empowered to make this decision? Because everybody's going to see it. And, somebody else should be doing that, or somebody else should be writing that. And I think a lot of people just don't speak up because they're not sure they're the right person to do it, or, they're just like, what if I'm wrong? Like, that's what I think it is, but not necessarily feeling confident.
I think both of those are great points, and both of them are really things we're fighting with the whole project when we're talking about CRM projects, right? We're fighting with people not wanting to share their data, not wanting to share their business process, and not feeling like they're responsible for any of that data or those processes too, right? Which is kind of the whole mentality that we have to break at the beginning to get buy-in for CRM as a whole, right? Before we can even think about training them on new things. So I think those are great call outs. Heidi, how do you solve those problems?
I wave my magical wand. I don't think there's a one size fits all approach for that. It's so unique to the organization's culture. And so much of user adoption, I think, is really rolled into change management. And to properly manage both of these things is really difficult, especially when you're not a large company, when you're a small, medium-sized business and you're wearing 50 different hats and you are the one that has to do all of this. It makes it really difficult. And those are the types of organizations that I'm working with, the small, medium-sized ones that are stretched thin, having a hard time, and it's really easy to lose focus of how important user adoption is. So how do I fix it? I mean, I just continually reinforce and encourage that you might not see the benefit of this, but you will see the pain of this if you don't embrace it. Like, I mean, how many of us have seen this firsthand? We've seen it fail. We've seen it fail terribly. We've also seen it succeed. I mean, I've seen it succeed and it's fantastic. The problem is they don't really know that it succeeded because they don't feel pain. It's the hard part of user adoption.
Let me ask something, and this is something that Heidi and Kylie, both of you have seen me present before, right? Where when I first got into Dynamics and I saw this interface, well, I saw the classic one before, and then the Unified came in and stuff, but the same issue. And I'm looking at all this stuff with the same eyes that I have looked way back into SharePoint and Microsoft 365 apps. And I ask myself, if I'm a user and I don't know something, for example, why am I not seeing a specific column that should be there? Or where is the import from CSV? I see Excel, but it's not there. Like, it's in here. Or how do I change the default view of this thing? Anything like that, which are either specific to Dynamics or specific to processes for my company. So is that just a refresher training again and again that we're pushing on people and having them remember this stuff? And the other thing that I know we have talked about is the reasoning for this question mark, which honestly I've never gotten why Microsoft doesn't make this better by default. Because they put the question mark there, but it's never for the actual user, right? It's always for the admin. It always gives you all this great content, but it's too much and it's not contextual. And if I go down this rabbit hole, I never come out. And it's a lot more for setting things up than for people who are actually using the product.
So your first question, do you just reinforce this through constant training and constantly talking about it? For the specific things you were talking about, changing a system view, importing data, like how-to functions, I think like a one-page quick reference guide is perfect. And then you can put that in your SharePoint library, make it accessible in Teams. Wherever your people are, put that there so they have that quick reference guide. So quick functional how-tos, I actually think would be better on like a quick reference guide, job aid, or if you really want to go crazy, like a manual.
Yes, have a manual on your desk. So what about policy? What about governance and guidelines and policies that are specific to my organization? Same thing, having that in the same kind of format you're
I feel
saying?
like documentation's a better place for that than training.
Okay.
That's just me. What do the rest of you think?
I
What
think
is it? Mhm.
I think we need some of all of these things, and I think the reason I'm hesitating too is some of the dividing line between me as a consultant and my customer and their department too, because I think there's a certain amount of training I can do, but if I try to train on business processes, your people they're not going to listen, right? Which goes back to what we kind of said at the beginning about getting our users involved in that training as well, right? And I think we just need to find the balance of where these things are documented. And I think for these like tips and tricks things in the most recent training I did, those tips and tricks around sharing your views, sorting your views, searching, I did them in every single training. There were people who came to like 5 of these trainings and they saw it 5 times and they were still asking questions the 5th time because people aren't listening, first of all, right? And so you
I'm
need
sorry,
to
what'd you say?
be exactly. Exactly. And so I feel repetitive. We both, Heidi and I, present a lot, and you feel when you're presenting, you feel like you're repeating yourself a lot of times sometimes, but you're not, because people aren't absorbing everything. And so it's important, I think, as trainers to not be afraid to repeat yourself within a training and within other sessions, number one, to get your point across. And then, however you choose to document these materials and these business processes, the important part is making it accessible to your users. So, like Heidi said, put it wherever they keep their documentation, but then also you need to link it, right? Link it in that question mark, link it in all the great tips that Asif likes to give in the embedded learning, or with their product, all of this stuff. There's so many options to make that training accessible, and your users need to be able to find it quickly. I don't know, I don't care necessarily if it's a video, or if it's a training manual, or if it's a one pager. It just needs to fit into the model your users are used to, and they need to be able to find it quickly and search for it.
Yeah, that's the
One of the
key. The
things I
model.
saw a
Sorry, go ahead.
podcast, or I heard a podcast where they're talking about this onboarding of a company. Said they made their whole Wikipedia version of their employee manual. It includes everything. How do you onboard? What is your team like? How do you do this? How do you set up your payroll? How do you click this on or find this in a CRM system? Everything is in this one giant Wikipedia. And if somebody comes in that's new, they just point them here. Ask your question. It's a global text sensitive search. They can find what they want. If you find something is incorrect, fix it. It's everybody's job to maintain this giant Wikipedia logic. And that, I think that is a great mindset and a culture, because if you can't find it there, then you need to be the first one to put it there. And they reward their people on how much they contribute to that.
Yeah, that type of contributing mentality for any kind of learning is a must. Many of the learning management systems these days actually have rewards and badges and that kind of stuff when you start contributing to the knowledge base instead of just being the consumer. And it's more of an LXP instead of a LMS that the world is going towards, which is so much better for sure. I was at a
And that's why
conference last. Sorry, go ahead.
that's just why I like the user group environment. That
Yeah.
I thrive on a user. I want to get there. So I've got this problem, and by the time I leave, somebody's answered my problem.
Yeah.
And that is something new with the Microsoft community that actually is affording that in a way that is useful.
It is. I was at a conference last week. I don't know if any of you saw my post on LinkedIn about that. I usually go to Microsoft 365 and Dynamics 365 conferences, but lately for the last year and a half or so, I've been presenting and going to the learning conferences, because a lot of the stuff that we do talk about in a ad hoc manner No offense to anybody who does that within our own communities. Those things are the main concepts that's being talked about in all the sessions at a learning conference like DevLearn and Learning Solutions Conference that I've been going to.
What's the
And
name of that one?
honestly, the one that I went to last week is called DevLearn, DEVLEARN.
Okay.
The other one is called Learning Solutions Conference. There's another one from ATD, the Association for Talent Development. They do a lot of big conferences. Like this one last week was more than 4,000 people, completely focused on instructional design, training, performance support, and it's great to see what the industry, L&D industry, is doing and bring that in within the Microsoft 365 or Dynamics 365 world instead of trying to recreate the wheel. For example, one of the this is weird. One of the things that this community is really talking about is how long is this traditional training going to last, and the whole training mindset. Like when someone comes to us, and a IT person or our CEO of a smaller company says, "Hey, we need to make training on it." Many of them are now saying they're pushing back and saying, "Wait a minute. What do you want to accomplish? What is the expectation? How are you going to judge me after all this thing is done?" Because training might not be the answer. And it's great to see that from the L&D folks instead of, because their job is to make training. They get paid for creating instructions, and they're the ones saying, no, this might not be the answer. Sometimes it's job aids, performance support. Sometimes it's contextual microlearning, which is what we do as a company also. And sometimes it's training. Sometimes it's hybrid training. Sometimes it's a blended learning model. So there's so many different paradigms that exist, and it's great to see the whole big L&D community talking about that as well.
That
And
why question's
yeah,
important though, right?
yeah,
Like asking why. We do that on configuration when we're implementing. And you should be asking that throughout everything. Like, well, why do you want this?
yeah.
Yes, I can do it, but why? I was actually going to ask when Kylie was talking, how often are you still delivering end user training? Because I haven't delivered an end user training in years. I've kind of shifted
Oh, wow.
everything to really encouraging organizations to adopt a train the trainer mindset where I'll train their super user or their influencer, and then they will get all that knowledge and I'll help them develop the training materials, but that person that's in that organization will deliver the training. It's so much more efficient than like me standing up. But I know there's sorry, I asked you a question and now I'm still talking. There's probably still really good use cases where maybe the organization culture needs somebody external to stand up and deliver it. So I see that, but I haven't done that in a while.
Yeah, I think currently for the projects I've been on, it's been kind of the same as what you're saying. So I've been doing the train the trainer, but usually for a larger group. So the group of super users, all of our SMEs and things like that. I think in the project I was referencing, we did, in addition to our kind of sprint reviews, we did several different train the trainer sessions, but they were basically all of management for all of those teams. So it was still, yeah, all our super users and probably some extras. And then they were supposed to take that back to their team. And I think primarily the client product owner was going to be the one responsible for making sure that that actually happened. And I think it depends on the project, because I like training. So, and I know you're probably the same, Heidi. Like if they're like, "Can you help with this?" I'm never going to say no, because I
Yes,
enjoy
can.
I enjoy doing it. I enjoy meeting new people. But I do think it depends on the project, and I think it depends on having a strong product owner, and strong team on the client side, right? Because I want to make sure, especially for my super users, that they are confident in what they're doing and that they're receiving a good, positive presentation of the solution, right? Because the risk, and it's even a risk on a sprint review, right, is if you have a product owner giving a demo who's not fully engaged or just not fully aware of the solution and the technology, if they're stumbling, if they're hesitating, if they click on something wrong and they demo something that causes an error or causes questions, then it becomes a risk for the rest of the project, because people lose confidence in the system.
Oh, yeah.
And it might not be, it could be valid things that need to be fixed, but it's really just being able to present well and build that confidence or even early on in the project, so that you can kind of keep building on that momentum. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, especially that word confidence.
Yeah.
A lot of the folks, especially in the CRM, because that's where we're focusing on CRM space, we're talking about salespeople, marketing people, customer service people, field service, and so forth, right? And these folks, all of them are in a way frontline, for most companies where they're making money, getting the leads, servicing customers, and so forth. And they don't have that much patience for
Yeah.
things that are changing for the sake of change. They want things to just work. And I've seen that offhand so many times that if something is not working, they're like, all right, get this thing out of here. Let's get back to my spreadsheet.
Right.
Let's get back to my form. Let's get back to my whatever I was doing before, because I need to get the job done. This is how I get paid. Okay. So yes, the confidence I think is super important. And if that doesn't happen day one, then they start pushing back very, very hard. And I've seen that especially on projects that come from Salesforce or Dynamics or any other kind of CRM, where they say, well, this was working fine. Why are we going this route? And Microsoft and other vendors need to understand that if they really, really want this to be successful, they need to make the product, the user adoption, all that stuff a priority day one, not just the technology, but users, human aspect of it. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. I've heard all of you speak on this thing. So, but it's still, it's like you were saying, it's bears repeating. These kind of things don't sink in, unfortunately, many times.
Yeah, it's really what's in it for me? Why am I going to use this? And when we're talking about CRM, I've found that the personas are very different, and reaching them is done very uniquely. So if you are implementing Dynamics for sales, your user adoption tactics need to be really focused on speed, quality of data, automation of really manual tasks outside of the app. Whereas if you're implementing Dynamics for customer service, for example, you're working with agents that are used to multiple screen pops and being able to navigate things really efficiently and quickly. And then that becomes, well, how many screen pops can I decrease? And that's like your metric for user adoption. Or like, can I get my transcription from my phone call like instantaneously, and then use some of the cool AI tools that have rolled out, do your sentiment analysis. You can get suggestions in real time, really cool tools available within the platform. They're really going to help customer service that sales isn't going to care about. And you can do that for each of the apps. So if you get really into it, like Kylie and I, you can really nerd out on this stuff and start to develop different strategies, different tactics, different ways to help, configuration, to work with your data, just all this cool stuff that you can do to reach different user groups.
And don't train those users on things they don't need, right? If
Yes.
you have sales and customer service people, don't train your customer service people on the sales stuff, because they don't care and they're going to stop listening, right? And you need to focus on the what's in it for them, like Heidi said. Yeah.
One thing that I had to learn the hard way when I first started in Dynamics a couple of years or a little bit more than that now is that these are different applications altogether. They might sound like they're all Dynamics, but honestly, I mean, if you look at GP or NAV, or if you look at anything, finance and operations and other stuff, they don't even look anything like the CRM. They're like, oh, there's a bar that says Dynamics, but it's a different application. And even within CRM space, you're right that the user base is so different that sales does not care about marketing, does not care about customer service, etc. So very true. It has to be very specific, otherwise people will tune out.
And it's hard to get them back on board once they've tuned you out.
The thing is that how you learn depends on how long you retain it. That if I just hear something, I may, high level understand it, but then within just a few hours or days, I forgot all about it. I'll have to be reinforced of how I do that. So that's also the frequency of how I see things and how I learn. I'm an audible learner, that I listen to things slowly. When I study for like the PMP certification, I've got the book on audio. I just listen to it as I drive back and forth, and that's the way I learn. But it requires me a lot more repetition than if I am somebody who's visual and can just see it and memorize it. Well, that's not me. So you have to understand the learning styles of people and accommodate for that.
Lawrence, you're the first person I've ever met who says they're auditory. I did a session at Summit about learning styles, and we all nerded out on this, and it was great fun. And I couldn't find anybody who was auditory. It's a shame.
Oh no, I am. And in fact, I'm so auditory that I'm a nerd that I will take my book and convert it to text, then do text to speech, and listen to that text to speech version. And because that way I can, there's I think it's called D Word as a .exe. It's a free download you can get that will convert text to speech, and then you can get all these different languages or accents for people. You can get the British accent, the American South, American North accents, and male and female. It used to be more robotic than it is today, but it's really how I learn.
I do that for all my Learn content. Anything I'm watching on Learn, I turn on just the browser speech or text to speech, whatever it's called, and I have the British lady. It's great. But I can't just listen to it. If I just listen to it, I don't absorb anything. If I just read it, I don't absorb anything. But if I read it and listen at the same time, then maybe I capture some of it. But that was a perfect tee up for Heidi to talk about learning styles.
Yeah, but see, that was the thing. But back in the day when I had that hour commute each way, all I had as an option was to listen. And then when I did the business analysis certification, that I had the audible version, and then I had the book version, and I would highlight, like I said, I went through it once and said, this is repetitive. This is the same thing in the book and on the audio. This is audio only, and this is book only. So then when I got time to sit and actually see the book, I only focused on what was only in the book.
By the way, didn't acknowledge Niaz had joined us as well. Niaz, this is a roundtable. If you really wanted to, if you want to speak and give your perspective, welcome to.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I joined a little late because of my other meetings. So thanks. And this is a good community, and this is a good roundtable conference that I'm hearing for the first time about supporting and training for the users. I support for two organizations, like one is bank, one is a school, and there also we do training for a lot of sales and service users in the bank. And then we do struggle a lot for training sales team separate and marketing team separate and sales service team separate, because they do have their mindsets different. If they are in sales, they just look at for the numbers and the customers and how to convince and how to make them possible to the users. That's the main ideal. And with that, even the applications, they like it or not, but they think of in a sales thought. If they come up with some requirement or something, if that is not matched with the system, they want to take it in a different way. So that's one challenging items that I face while training and supporting for sales team. For the good case, like we put a mailbox for the sales team, like all the sales team can have one simple mailbox, and a dedicated support team we have, and they send an email for anything they came across with the errors or supporting knowledge or anything. We have the supporting documents available, so we give them the document, or any of the technical team will involve and then support them as in required. So that's how we are doing it. And for service team, there are telephonic integrations, like those are things that are happening. So there are a lot of challenges because of this remote COVID and all. So they don't have the physical phones. They turned it into soft phones, and now they're facing a lot of things there. There also we are supporting. So that's why I joined this conference, to see what I can gain from this one, or how the other platforms teams are working on this area. Thanks for letting me to give this opportunity to come here. This is my first conference, yes, but it's good. Yeah, thank you.
Have you discovered Power Automate yet? I feel like that could be the answer to a lot of your stuff.
No, what's that?
No, what's that?
Heidi's favorite thing.
Magic.
I think
magic.
I think there were a few several interesting things that you said in there that we could probably talk about the whole time. But one you mentioned almost glazed over was about like business transformation, right? Which we talked a little bit earlier, when people are not knowing if they can request new features, but also when they request changes, figuring out how that fits in CE. And I think something that's hard that we need to find the balance of is like when we have business processes that are that way for a reason and we can modify CE to support them versus when there are things that we should be working to get our business more in line with a standard sales process that CE was already built to support, right? And I think that's just an interesting discussion, and neither side is right? There's pros and cons for both sides. And then depending what we choose impacts our training as well, right? Because if you have to get your business on board with a new process in addition to a new system, there can be some struggles there. But if it's a new process that is easier, and then we need to learn how to communicate the value, right?
That's where the BA hat comes into play, that you've got to do your gap analysis. The other thing that's important is to understand the downstream impact of stuff. If you don't have your systems documented well enough to know that, well, if I change this little thing, all I'm doing is moving this field from here to here. Right. Well, some things may be on a pixel part of the screen. I need that XY coordinate. If you move it, it breaks. Or if I change the label, yeah, even in the AI world, if I change the label to something else, it will break. You've got to understand a lot of that before you go in. And I think that's why I think it's important for a good BA to document all their systems thoroughly, so when they can understand what are the impacts of things.
Now, well, thankfully, some of the breaking points you brought up they sound like they're just Canvas apps. So in CRM world, you wouldn't break with any of those things, just to be clear.
That's a good point.
You can change your labels. You just might upset some users. So, beware.
As far about the learning styles, one of the things I'd like to talk about is I know Pluralsight has a lot of trainings videos out there that you can subscribe to. I call it the buffet of training. It's an all-you-can-eat for a flat fee. That the idea of learn.com has a lot of stuff that's out there, but can a company such as mine leverage that platform to build our own custom, the National Council's, .learn.com, and put our logos and our spin on it to train just specifically for ours? I haven't seen that yet.
Well, so, there are many like that, right? You talked about learn.com, you talked about Pluralsight. There's also LinkedIn Learning that has some great, and there's many other libraries like that. Yeah. But I gotta say, one of the things that I talk about a lot at conferences, and Kylie and Heidi are probably already sick of me talking about this, and Pam also have heard it many times also, is that it's not just about the content, it's about the context, right? You can give your users, doesn't matter how much content you give them, but if it's not available to them at their moment of need, it does not get used as much. And I've done this thing wrong way many, many times, Lawrence. Honestly, we've done it where we provided hundreds of videos that we produced ourselves as a company, and it just sat there in a wiki library or some other place that nobody used. There's actually a formula. You want me to give you a formula?
Oh, please.
There's a formula that the learning community uses, and I was talking about this last week also among the learning community. It's you have to get people to where they need to be within 2 clicks and within 10 seconds. Okay, that is actually a proven formula. It's not something that I made up on the spot. It sounds pretty cool that I just made up, but no, it's not. If you're able to get your people, especially the millennial generation and onwards, even for folks like us also, I think within 2 clicks and 10 seconds, then the user adoption, does increase, or at least does not decrease. Because the satisfaction that happens in your amygdala, just directly in your brain, it's there that, okay, I was able to get the answer that I was looking for. I'm not, quote unquote, frustrated. Many of us who have been trainers, I've been a trainer for a very, very long time, feel that I'm giving you all the information, I'm giving you all the knowledge. Why is that a problem? Why isn't this working? But the problem actually is too many choices, believe it or not. When you give too many choices, the brain says, I am not ready to make a choice because I might make the wrong one. So when you give hundreds of content pieces like Pluralsight and LinkedIn Learning, which is all wonderful stuff, it's too much. When I'm looking for an answer, I'm looking for an answer to move on. When I want to dig in, put my phone and do not disturb, and I want to dig into a particular course, that's a different need. So it's two different needs, right? And we have to satisfy those type of learner needs also, depending on the learner journey.
That's why for in-person trainings, I bring candy. Brain thing.
Yeah, that does help. I'm gonna show you guys. Heidi and Kylie have seen parts of it. Pam, of course, has before also, but I want to get perspective from others as well. Actually, from you guys. This is something we've been working on for a while. A free version of our VisualSP system. This free version basically is you just get the actual plugin and you get some of the fundamental content for free, no cost, no obligation or anything else. And I want to get your perspective as to what do you think about this. So this is the 2 clicks, 10-second thing that I was talking about basically. Replacing the question mark, first of all, after this gets installed with the logo right here. So no more question mark. You see this logo, and if you click on this logo, then this content comes up right there. This is all free content that we're giving out right now that we produce that we'll maintain. The idea being that all the fundamental information that is needed in context. For example, what are the different Dynamics terms, and how do I think about leads, context, all that stuff is right there. And all that stuff is there in context to where I am right now, right? So I'm at leads, I see context for leads stuff. And if I click on it, for example, leads versus contacts, it actually gives me a video, talks about that in a fundamental generic sense. So nothing very specific that would be different from your company. Same thing, what are the different Dynamics terms? Here it is. So within a couple of clicks, within much less than 10 seconds, I get my answer and I move on. And if it's a different context, like if I'm at opportunities, then the same icon here is going to give me different content. Oops, still loading up over here. But now this has talking about managing opportunity stages, and so forth. So any feedback on this thing?
First of all, did you pay Lawrence to give you the perfect segue into this demo?
Of course.
Where do you think I got the candy from? He shipped it yesterday.
I shipped it yesterday. All that. Yeah.
No, my question was going to be, so this material, are you guys planning to maintain that, or can the customer maintain it and make updates to change the terminology to their business terminology and add more details, or how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, really good question. The idea here is that this hole exists right now that we want to fill without having any barrier to cost. So this you get no cost, and we will maintain it for sure. We're going to maintain this going forward. Now, of course, companies will say, well, I want my own logo. I don't want it to say VisualSP. I want it to say my company. I want this to be our own logo. How do I do that? And that's the paid. That's the VisualSP Premium. So they can click on this thing, and then here there's information about exactly what VisualSP Premium is, what it costs, and so forth.
Now, how would that work in like a streamlined model-driven app? So if my users are using an app that only has like 3 tables on it, would those be the only 3 tables that pop up on the help?
The free one, no, it will be exactly like what you're seeing over here. Now, actually, having said that, if they're not able to get to a particular table, like let's say opportunities is not there, which I think should always be there. But anyway, if that's not there, then that content will not be there because you don't have the context, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that information will just not be there. Whatever you go to, you will see that. Now, obviously, once again, this is all free content, free functionality. Yeah. But if they want to change any of this thing or augment it or change the branding, everything else, then there's a paid model.
Okay, so in our organization, we're a member organization, and I want to say, how do we manage members? And it's a custom entity altogether. Is that an option in this, or does that go to the paid version?
It's a paid version.
All right, and which I thought was reasonable. I think like the 250 users was like a flat fee. It's a yearly rate, not a per month per user individual rate.
Yearly.
Yes, yeah. So I like that model.
Yeah. And sorry, of course, not trying to make this self-serving to VisualSP only, but honestly, with my own background, I feel that this kind of thing is needed for people. So that's why we always have the free version of something for SharePoint, something for Microsoft 365, and now we have it for Dynamics to at least put a Band-Aid on the wound that's for sure there, because people just don't have anything. And that question mark just bothers me every time I click on it by default. Like, come on, it's annoying.
It's a lot of work to set up your own custom help. It's not as simple as
yes. As we did, as the session that I worked on, right? You can do some kind of contextual stuff, but it's got its own issues. And yeah, replacing the question mark with your own. It's this way. And honestly, if you're wondering how simple this is, you do a search for VisualSP plugin, Google or whatever, Bing. And once you get to the first link right here, you install it is a browser extension in this particular case. You install the extension, and right after installing it, you go back to your environment, and it has this. That's it. There's nothing else. And then for companies who do go for the paid, premium, then we put this up as a managed solution. So it gets installed in your environment. So it doesn't have to be a browser extension anymore. It could just be a managed solution that appears everywhere. So yeah, I just wanted to get.
Yeah, I think it's cool. And there's a lot of people who are just using CE out of the box, or, using that in addition to some custom tables or however. And I think that's a great way for them to get started and have some material and then see if, if this is a solution they need, if it is something that they can customize, or if it works for their users, and then they'll know before making their final decision and selecting a vendor, right?
Yeah, and it's tough with the CRM platform too, because it's so highly configurable.
Customized, yeah.
Many people are configuring it beyond the out of the box, and we'll rename the contact table member table, like in Lawrence's example, or my opportunity. I've never implemented that out of the box opportunity process. Everybody has their own process. So that it would be neat to be able to turn off certain features of VisualSP's free product. Like I have already configured my business process flow to have my own stages, and this is just going to confuse my users, and they're going to go looking for certain things. Yeah.
Well, so we have the other model where we work through partners, and then they can provide a free version of it, but then it's free for the actual customer, but the partner itself is absorbing some cost and then customizing it, but still it's
neat.
Yeah,
it's a really
very reasonable.
Cool idea.
And since the free version is an extension too, it might not be, don't give it to all your users right away, right? Give it to your super users as your kind of trial period. And then once they figure out what's valuable, then get the premium before you roll it out to everybody.
Absolutely.
Because training your users on a browser extension, I mean, that doesn't sound very fun. We all remember training people on the old, CRM for Outlook. No, we don't want to go back there.
And once again, it's usually what companies do is they don't roll out browser extensions at all. It's they roll out a managed solution, and once you have a managed solution uploaded, it just works for everybody in the environment. No extension needed at all. Extension is there for individuals to try it out. So,
agreed. Yeah, makes sense.
Cool. So, and of course, this thing I've been passionate about since back in the day when I first saw the question mark for SharePoint. If anybody worked on SharePoint on-prem, I know, Pam, you have for many, many years. That used to be really, really bad and would really upset me every time I would see a user in my class. I used to teach a lot of classes. In fact, Pam was actually one of my students long time ago. But anybody would click on that and say, hey, Asif, what does this do? I'm like, don't click on it. Please just get rid of it. So I've been kind of anti question mark for Microsoft products for a long time. But anyway, you don't want anything in the interface that's going to confuse a user. You want to minimize things. I'm very much into the minimization of things. And I think some of that stuff just clutters up and makes people create support tickets for things they don't understand or they don't have access to, right? I click on this, I see some functionality that I don't have access to, then I try it. Like, hey, why don't I have access to it? And you're the ones, folks over here, who get a support ticket for that user. So anyway, we got about 6 minutes remaining. Any other thoughts people want to share about tips and tricks? Yeah, Pam?
No, this has been great. So one of the things, first of all, Heidi, I saw you posted on LinkedIn about you spoke at Summit, and you're really excited about that. And I took a screenshot and I sent it to Asif, and I was like, hey, like, we should talk to her. And then he said, guess what? I'm talking to her next week. So nice to meet you. I appreciate you guys letting me jump in. It was nice to meet all of you guys. You talked about getting users involved at the beginning and just kind of like listening as the conversations were unfolding. I more and more, I think in the last couple of years, I've stopped doing training for users because I've always got some kind of business advocate. Most of the work I'm doing for a reason. There's been a request, somebody's asked, somebody owns that, they're involved. So I'm used to getting their buy-in, but I don't necessarily always get like the end users buy-in early on. And so I really like that idea, and I see lots of value in it because it's going to help them with their training. And Kylie, you were also talking about, and I lost my thought now. But one of the things like with the training, getting them early on, getting them involved, the documentation, that's what you were talking about. So that's also going to help the end users and all of those things. Like I'm more and more thinking of like a couple things on the burner now. I'm like, we should get more people involved. Call more people. So I did really like that. The other thing I was going to say just about VisualSP is a lot of times if we're not using the button or the sidebar, especially in places where it's going to be confusing, you don't have to do that at all because you can just put things up as banners. But I use there's pop-ups that you can have, messages that come up the first time someone goes to a site. And that is really helpful because I can post announcements like this change just came out. This is what to expect. Here's more documentation. They click on it to continue, but then at least I know they've seen it. So, but rather than the sidebar, because I definitely have scenarios where I'm just like, I want to simplify this as much as possible. I don't want them to see anything on the side that might be distracting or send them on a, wild goose chase or just search.
Appreciate you sharing your experience with. Yeah, Pam has used VisualSP as a VisualSP admin at a couple of different companies, so she has lots of on-the-ground experience with it. Thanks for that, Pam.
I was saving it all up, like just my little notes at the end.
All right. Lawrence, Niaz, anything else for you guys? You're muted right now, sorry.
Okay, no, I think this is a very useful that I got my was a Microsoft certified trainer in 2005 on Dynamics, and that it's come a long way since then. That back then it was an embarrassment, and today it has come so far that it's unbelievable. That like in the old days, security was in Active Directory. So if you changed a record, it had to go through Active Directory to save your security changes. I mean, really? But but the idea of training is still important. That we got to get the users buy-in, and the idea of having somebody just say, "Well, I know best, and I'm going to make the users do it this way," but yet they're not willing to go sit in the user's chair for an hour and do it that way. And it's finding out how ridiculous it is and how many steps it takes and how cumbersome it is. That I think is also the best training that we need to do is to our people who are designing these systems. Let them feel their own pain for a while. Sorry. So that's my little rant, but thanks.
That's good. I felt the same way. So I actually also became an MCT in 2005. That's so weird. But mine was for SharePoint. focus at that time because I was doing a lot of training on that. And same kind of sentiment that I had about SharePoint, that this is a piece of crap. Why am I training on this thing? And it became a lot better over time. It's the same thing with Dynamics. It just became a lot better over time. And now all of us are focused on all these products, right? Because it's a lot better. But what happens to the whole journey for people? Yeah. It's a struggle at times. And as Kylie, Heidi, you were both saying in the beginning also, that repetition where you feel like you're repeating yourself many times, but honestly, a lot of stuff is not sinking in. That's why a lot of these things that we've talked about today, honestly, I don't think any of these things, no offense to anybody, I don't think any of these things are quote unquote new. They have been said at times here and there.
How dare you?
But it bears repeating. People need to understand that the human component is the most important component in this whole thing. It's not the technology migration. It's not the systems migration. It's your humans migration. User adoption as a service, not just a technical stuff as a service, this and that, and subscription as a service. Yeah. But users, without that, nothing matters. None of these things matters. And I was a big culprit thinking formerly before that, what, if I just build beautiful systems and all that good stuff, they will come. Things are going to happen. And I went from it being a technologist to a psychologist, honestly. Understanding that the human side of things is the most important thing, even if it's a few choices, just give them what they need to do and stop.
I think that's great, and a great link back to you talking about the other learning conferences and things you were going to, because so often we think, oh, we're doing CE and we have to look at CE training strategies. And it's like, really, we just need to remember people are people, and how can we effectively train and motivate people and stop trying to do things our way, but figure out what's best,
Love it.
in the industry.
Asif, if I might interject for a moment, Niaz had a comment and he was trying to make it, but he was muted. So before you end, I think it would be great if he could actually.
Oh, sorry, Niaz, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was mute. So
go ahead.
So nothing great from my side. Just want to say, I think VisualSP. I had so this content is all managed by your site or your end, right? So if we want to take extra things into that, so is it something?
Yeah, everything that you were seeing on there is customizable. All the content, you can make your own content. Just the customization is a paid functionality.
Okay.
So feel free to just type in VisualSP plugin, get the plugin, go to your Dynamics environment. It's going to work immediately. You'll see. There's going to be a link up there also that's going to tell you exactly what the premium functionality is. So check it out. Would love some feedback. Yeah. Sure. Once again, even at the end, if you and others, if the free version helps, that's going to make us happy, because we do want to kill that question mark and replace it with something that's actually helpful, in my humble opinion. All right, I think we're at time over here. Thanks so much for joining, everybody. Lawrence, Kylie, Heidi, Pam, Niaz, Michael, appreciate it. And Kara had to jump off earlier, but we're going to make this recording available online as well. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
too.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.